you don't need a big list. Like even when I only had 300 people on my email list, I still was able to get great engagement and I was able to make sales from that list. So if you do have an email list, then my advice is email them. Like, don't just let it sit there. You want to be showing up. If you're very inconsistent, if you show up once in a while, people aren't going to engage with you. They're going to just unsubscribe because it's not that interesting. So push yourself to actually do it. Take the time, write an email. If you're not doing any right now, start with once a week, and then you can go up from there.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited. We have a very special guest. We are bringing on Josh Kropkof. And Josh is the co-founder of a company called The Email Agency that he started with his brother after selling their first digital products company. Now, Josh, under The Email Agency, has created over 115 different brand strategies related to email marketing. And these companies were in 88 different niches. So he can work with anybody. He's generated over $50 million in sales for e-commerce brands using email and SMS marketing. And Josh is also the host of a podcast called The Email Revolution, where he tells the story behind his entrepreneurship journey. And he features guests regarding how to use email marketing to build their brands. Please join me in welcoming Josh Kropkof to our platform. Hey, Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us. We're excited to learn about email. So first of all, Josh, your background, you're an attorney by background, right?
Not an attorney, but I went to law school. I decided not to be an attorney, but I have a law degree, but I did not take the bar, and I was never an actual attorney.
So why email? How did you get an email then?
So it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to give you like the short version. It's definitely a bit different. I kind of fell into it by accident. If we go back like 10 years when I was in college, I was studying hospitality at the time, and my goal at that time was to like own my own hotel or resort or casino or something. And I kind of discovered in college that was not really, it wasn't the path that degree was going to lead to anyway. And I was exposed, I was working in that world, and kind of realized with just working nights and weekends all the time and everything, I was like, this isn't really for me. I don't want to do this for a career. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, to be honest. But during that time, I was struggling with this just side issue I was having in college, which was that basically I wanted to get better at dating. And so I did some research online, and I found this email newsletter called Dating Advice Daily for Men. And I joined it. And what would happen is every day, the guy who ran the email list would send just actionable tips and stories and advice about dating. And so fast forward a little bit, I stayed on that newsletter for a while and ended up in law school because I was still trying to sort of figure out what to do. And I had some people say to me, you'd be great as an attorney, go to law school. Because I was, I guess, good at like debating people and stuff like that. So I moved to Florida, to Miami, and went to the University of Miami. And I was there for law school, still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I'm still reading that newsletter and getting advice from them, and everything was working great and all that, by the way. But interestingly enough, the person who ran Dating Advice Daily started to pivot a little bit into teaching things about digital marketing, and specifically about email marketing. He started to sort of reveal like, hey, I've had this newsletter now for several years, and I've actually made millions of dollars from selling my books and my courses on dating and different things like that. And he was only 24 at the time, and he was a millionaire. And so he starts revealing a little bit more about how this all worked. And so I was just hooked, because I'm in law school and I'm hearing about like, how if you become an attorney at a top firm, you can start off and make like $300,000 or $400,000 a year. But you have to work your butt off and have no life, basically. And meanwhile, here's this guy like my age, like in his mid-20s, who's sending emails every day and he's a millionaire. Like, what is this? So I know it's kind of a long story, but to make a long story short, my brother and I started really getting into this, and he was in college at the time at Florida State, and we had always wanted to have our own business since we were kids. And I think we were both just trying to figure out what's the path, how's that going to happen. And so we kind of got into this whole digital, entrepreneurship, email marketing, digital marketing world. And decided like, you know what, let's just start a business. Let's not wait. And so that's what we did when I graduated law school, he graduated college, we kind of teamed up and started this business. And at first it was really hard and things did not go well. And eventually they did go well. We stuck with it for a while. So that's kind of how that happened.
I love it. I love it. It's interesting the things that people get successful on. I'm always interested. I think of Jeff Walker. We had him on our podcast a while ago, and he writes the Product Lunch Formula book,
Yeah.
New York Times bestseller. And he made a lot of money through email starting off, talking about investments. So it's amazing what people can generate, especially when email first came out, definitely. So tell us about like how you see entrepreneurs using email now in order to generate revenue. Like what are they doing now, and how are they using that particularly to generate revenue?
So I do think that anyone who's an entrepreneur absolutely should have an email list and send emails to that list. And that's just like, as without even getting into all the different ways, let's just start there, because I think so many people don't do this. And I know it can almost seem daunting. It's like, if you haven't done it before, like, how am I going to get a list together? And, I won't have that big of a list. How do I know what to say? Like, how do I do this? And I think it just starts by making a commitment that you are going to send an email, and that email is going to give people value, whatever that means to you. It could be advice. Like you could, give people advice on investing, or, how to handle your finances, or it can be as simple as, and this is really what works for me a lot of times, is just taking things that happen in my life/business and telling stories about it through email. And as long as it teaches something, right? As long as there's a point behind the story, that can be really valuable and really, entertaining for people. Because the thing is, we get so many emails. And I think there's sort of a stigma out there about, inbox clutter, and I don't like emails. I don't want to get more, advertising. I don't want that, right? Because I already have too much to deal with as it is. And that's true. So you do have to keep that in mind, and you don't want to just email people to like try to make money. You really want to give people value. So it really starts there. And if you have anything that you sell, you can sell that thing through email. Where people get caught up is thinking that they need to make email sort of like an advertising channel. It's not. It's a one-on-one direct communication channel. So if you can use it that way and use it to build relationships with your audience, your followers, then the sales will come from that. But I call it sort of like soft selling. Like, you're not like going at it like you're, just buy this, get my latest product. It's more like, okay, we're going to give you some cool things when you're on this list. You're going to get to hear stories. You're going to get tips. You're going to get, advice on these specific problems that you might have. And, we may sell you some things once in a while, but it's because we think they could really help with the problems that you're dealing with. So knowing your audience, knowing what pain points resonate with them, what their desires are, and speaking to those things is hugely important. I hope that answers your question a little bit, because I know I kind of rambled there, but
Oh yeah. It was definitely very, very helpful there, about creating emails that help people, right? And having that as a motive, let's talk about some challenges. What are some challenges in the way that really get in the way of a successful email relationship? I'm not even call it a campaign, right? It's a relationship at the end of the day.
yeah. Well, I think the biggest challenge is that what you just said is looking at it as a relationship, because people might hear that and think, well, what does that mean? How do I build a relationship through email? Well, think of it as a conversation, because email was never intended to be a place for marketing and advertising. It's been around a very long time. And it was created as a place to have conversation. Initially, like way back before email was publicly available, it was companies and corporations and organizations would use email like amongst their company. So it was a very internal thing, but it was like communicating messages between coworkers. And then when it expanded and became publicly used, it's like, you can send a message to your friend, you can send a message to your colleague. And that is what you need to keep in mind, because it became sort of a place that got abused with just spam and ads and all of that. So taking it back to the conversation though, I heard a stat recently, there's over 330 billion emails sent every single day. Think about that. I mean, that's insane. Like, is there anything that even compares to that people do every day? I think it dwarfs text messages. It dwarfs everything. So how do you email responsibly, I think is sort of what you're asking. And it's like, try to just continue a conversation with people. So that's a challenge. The other challenge is deliverability, like brands that send a lot of email. And a lot of it is, just sales and discounts and marketing emails. They run into problems because their emails end up in spam, or they end up in like the junk mail folder, and people don't even see them. But it still comes back to, how can I fix that? It's going to come back to sending emails that people want to read, because the user who's opening your email on Gmail or Apple Mail, they have control, they have influence over how your email gets filtered. And the way that they have that control is if they're opening and they're clicking the links, or they're hitting reply and they're answering an email, then Apple Mail, Gmail, all those different platforms, what they do is they see that, and they it factors into their algorithm that, okay, this brand's emails are valuable, people are enjoying them. And so what do? They make sure that people see them. But it works the other way. If people are annoyed, they're unsubscribing a lot, they're not opening the emails, they're reporting them as spam, then it's going to really hurt you, to where now these different email platforms are going to take your emails and filter them into a spam folder or into junk mail and make sure less people see them. So that's why it all goes back to just having this messaging in your emails that people actually want to read. And I work with e-commerce brands, and I think it's a real challenge for a lot of e-commerce brands, because they're so used to just sending emails that say, hey, check out our latest fall styles, shop now, get 10% off. And that's all they want to send. And so what I help brands do is sort of, they still get to do that. Like, they still get to sell, but I help them make their emails better so that people actually want to read them. And then that's why they see their engagement and their sales going up, because you can't just send the same stuff like that in 2023 and get away with it. More people are smart these days about who they're reading email from. Like, people are way more sophisticated buyers now. And so if you're still doing email sort of that archaic way, where you don't really care about the consumer, you're just, trying to get a sale, you're going to get beat by your competitors who are starting to understand this. So I think it's very important to be aware of these things.
It's interesting because, I know when we were doing an email campaign, it was days that, it's consistency, right? But there are days as a human, you just don't feel like writing an email. Like, the ideas just don't flow. Mm-hmm. And, it was interesting because I was like, oh, I could use ChatGPT. And it was interesting because ChatGPT would take my words and would make it really interesting. But I think my audience could tell it was ChatGPT, right? Because the open rate kind of got lower. Like, oh, she's sending computer stuff to me, even though ChatGPT was doing pretty good, right? I think it lost that authentic feel to it. Let's talk a little bit about AI and ChatGPT. Sure. Do you guys use ChatGPT when you're constructing your emails?
Well, so we use it in our company in a pretty limited sense right now. And I guess I will say this up front. I personally feel like I'm a little behind on the whole ChatGPT thing because I don't use it a ton. And that's just, there's no reason for it. I haven't used it as much as I think a lot of people, and I want to learn more about it. I'll use it sometimes for very specific things, but there are in our company, some of my team members, my email specialists who are putting emails together, they will use it, but not like they won't have it write the email for them. What they will use it for is to generate ideas, and it can be very helpful. If you have someone who's, pretty intelligent in marketing to where they understand, okay, here's the audience I'm talking to, here's some of their pain points, here's some of the benefits that this product or this service can provide, and this is the offer, or this is the thing I'm trying to sell, right? That type of information, you can feed that to AI like ChatGPT, and it will give you ideas of creative ways to say things. So we don't have any of our people like using it just like writing the emails, and I think that would be hard to do. Sometimes they will ask it to rewrite something that they wrote, and then they'll take that and rewrite that, if that makes sense, because it can be very helpful with idea generation and helping you get past sort of if you feel like you're saying the same thing over and over again, and it's like, how can I say this differently? I've found it's very helpful with that. But it is an interesting space. I've told other people this. I really think AI in the future, I would love it if it would take on some of the more complex, like logistical back end things in email marketing that still right now humans have to do. That I think it would be great if AI would take care of it. Like just the process of like scheduling emails and making sure that like certain automated emails don't like that they don't go to people who did certain things, and like you want to filter certain things so that people aren't getting too many emails, and there's like problems with display like in dark mode and all kinds of stuff like that. I'm like, that's what AI should actually be fixing for us, so that we don't have to rack our brains trying to figure out that stuff. I think the creative side, though, I think people are way more creative than they let themselves believe. I'm not some crazy creative genius, but I feel like I can be pretty creative when I want to be. So I think that it's cool that, AI can help you with these things to like get your ideas flowing. But email marketing isn't that hard if you just keep in mind the conversational aspect of it. And I always tell people, like, if you don't know where to start by asking questions of your list and getting people to reply back to you with answers. That's the best way to spark an ongoing conversation that you can then send another email out to everybody publicly replying to some of the answers you got, right? That's like, that can go on forever. So that's like a good way. If you're not sure, how do I start this? That's the best way I can tell you to start.
I love it. So like maybe give me an example of a good question that one might be able to put out there.
So I feel like it's definitely so niche dependent, or like what. So I'm trying to think, like you help people, Susanne, you help people with managing finances, right?
Yes, business finances.
Okay. What's like the main thing you help people with?
We help them implement profit first.
Okay. So if I were you, I would just ask something like, hey, I'm really glad you're here on my email list, and I want to make sure that I provide a lot of that. Like, I want to give you emails that give you a lot, that you can get a lot of value out of. So I'm curious, what is the biggest thing that you feel like is stopping you from making more profit in your business right now? Not just revenue. What's the thing that's stopping you from making more profit? Send. That's it. Or, call to action at the end of the email. Let me know. Reply to this email and let me know. Thanks. Send. That's your email. You will get so many replies, and it'll give you so many ideas of things you can talk about.
I love it. That's actually a really good idea. Thank you, Josh, for that. Now, guys, if I start getting a lot of emails from you, I know exactly where you're getting that from.
Yeah, because that can spark a lot, and the crazy thing is you never know what people are going to say. Like, you might think, all right, I can kind of guess what I'm going to get, and people will surprise you with their answers, and you'll be like, I never even thought of that. And then you can send an email and be like, hey, Yesterday, I asked you guys what was the biggest thing stopping you from making more profit. And, Jeremy from Oklahoma City said this, and I thought this was the coolest, like, this is the best answer I received. And you like highlight his answer, and then you say, let me answer this in a couple ways. And over the next couple days, I'm going to follow up on this. So then you can have like 3 days worth of email content just based on that one answer.
Now, I'm always surprised by the open rates. I think we have a pretty high open rate. I think it's about 42 to 48%, which is pretty good when I look at the stats. But a lot of people tell me that they don't have those kind of open rates. Tell us, Josh, what is an average open rate, and when is our open rate concerning to you?
So I'll be honest with you here. Open rates are something that I would say doesn't matter as much these days, especially because what you're seeing is most likely not true in terms of open rates. Like whatever you see, it's probably not true. And what I mean by that is it is really hard now for your ESP, wherever you send your emails from, your email service provider. It's hard for them to actually gauge what is a real open, because if you use an iPhone, it automatically will tell the email service provider, your email platform, that you opened an email even if you didn't. So it'll just it's kind of we could just call it inflating open rates. So that's been actually happening for a really long time, but it's become more public lately because of iOS 15. So I would say don't necessarily trust your open rates. There are ways around that I won't get into, like ways that you can sort of tell a little bit better what your true open rates are. But I guess to answer your question in part, though, when is it concerning? Anytime that you are sending emails and your open rates are what I would call like abysmal, like 2% or something, 3%, 4%, then it's a cause for concern, because I would say anything under 10% is likely going to spam, meaning that like most people just aren't seeing that email, because it's unlikely that if it was going to the inbox, that your open rate would be that small, right? Unless if you're cold emailing, right? If you're emailing a list that didn't ask to hear from you, then you might get that. So what I would say is if you see something like that, you may want to talk to someone, and there are plenty of free services online just to help you with deliverability and just to get you out of spam, because you might have an issue there. And I don't want to go into the weeds too much with that, but that's where it would be concerning. But I think much more important than open rate is how many people are actually engaging with your email. So clicking on the links in your email, or replying to the email. Right. Those are better metrics, because that shows that your emails are actually working. Right. So those things help too. Like if people are clicking and replying to your emails, your open rate will go up, because Gmail is going to prioritize your emails in people's inboxes. So they're going to be in that primary inbox. So that's what I would say about open rates is take it in context, right? Like take it with a grain of salt and see, how are people engaging with them in general?
There are algorithms everywhere. I tell you, now they're in
Yeah.
email too. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Shouldn't have
yeah.
algorithms in email. That should be, if I send it, you got it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you'd be surprised. Like even sometimes some emails that I would send just from my personal email, that are not going to like an audience, just one-to-one. I've had issues where people have been like, "Hey, your email went to spam." I'm like, "Why?" Like I just sent you something for work, or like, you know what I mean? Like we're colleagues or we're friends. Like that's weird. And then you look into it and you find it's like there's all these weird reasons why that can happen. And it turned out for me, it was like my signature in the email, like the image file was weird or something. So you never know. There's so many filters because people get so much email, and so the inboxes are getting way stricter now. So it is easy to go to spam. So it's just something you want to be aware of, because of course, if you send an email, you don't want it going to spam. You want people to read it. So
Right, definitely. A lot of work goes into email. We had actually our email provider was actually blocking certain people for no reason, even if they were legitimate businesses. So
yeah.
It can definitely happen from that
Yep.
standpoint. Now, tell me about, how do you craft an email that everybody wants to open? Like, what emails grab people's attention and keeps it, so they keep looking forward to it? What does that email look like?
So it's going to really depend on what your niche is, who your audience is, because it's hard to answer, because it's like, if you have an e-commerce business and say you're selling footwear, why does someone want to open an email about a particular shoe, right? Is it because they have, they're an athlete and they need to the running shoes they have are like super important, right? Or is it just that they're trying to be comfortable and throughout their day? Versus, like, let's take a totally different type of business. I mean, like if you're in the finance business, or your CPA, like people are going to open emails because they're trying to figure out how to make more profit in their business, or they're trying to figure out how to pay less in taxes, or whatever it is. So I think that relevancy is the best way I can explain that. Like, it has to be relevant. So this is why it just comes down to really knowing your audience, knowing why did they join that email list. Make sure you're sending to people who want to hear from you, right? Like I don't recommend sending cold email or like mass emails out to like lists that you buy online or rent or stuff. I'm always against that. Not a good practice in general. So we're talking about like people who signed up, they want to hear from you. They're on your email list because there's something that interested them. So knowing what is it that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, knowing what are the things that they want to get out of, hearing from you, and making it relevant to them. Now, that being said, you may have, everybody's got so much going on throughout their day. So even if they signed up and they want to hear profit tips from Susanne, they may not have time to open it, right? So what's going to grab their attention? So this is where you can get creative. And the thing that I have found, and this is a personal preference, I like using what I call curiosity in the subject line. Okay. And this doesn't come from me, by the way. This is like a copywriting thing. But when I send an email to my list, I a lot of times will use a subject line that doesn't exactly tell them what's in the email, but it piques their interest. So I'm trying to think of like, okay, so like right now, Black Friday and Cyber Monday is coming up. It's less than a month away. So e-commerce businesses, the people that I talk to, like that's all they're thinking about right now for the next month. So that's a relevant topic to everybody in my space right now. So what can I do to get them to open? Well, truthfully, almost any email that has to do with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, if that's in the subject line right now, they're probably going to open it. But put that aside for a second. If I'm trying to really get their attention, I sent an email with the subject line 97% year over year increase on Black Friday. And that was the subject line. And then the email was about this brand that we worked with, and we got them a 97% increase from one year to the next on Black Friday. And I explain in the email a little bit about how we did that. So that gets a really high open rate because so many people in my space are wondering, wait, how can I get that? So I think that's the biggest thing is you have to think about it from their perspective. What is it that they are going to be hooked by, and what is it that they really want to know right now? And that can change, right? Because if I sent that same email in June, it would probably do terrible. It wouldn't get a good open rate because they're not thinking about that in June. They're actually from my audience, they're all on vacation. Most of them take the summers off, and it's really hard to get their attention like June through August. But so maybe I talk about something else there. But I'd say that's like, to get them to open, don't just tell them in the subject line. Like people might send like, instead of doing what I just did, I could have said 3 tips to maximize Black Friday sales. Not as interesting, right? It doesn't like, okay, I know what's going to be in this email. It's going to be 3 tips. Now, maybe I want to know what the tips are, and maybe I'll still open, but it's more curious if I'm like, wait a second, what's this about? Rather than, oh, I know what this is already. People open an email because either they know what's in there and it's something they've been anticipating, they really want it, or they're opening because they want to see what it is, like what's in there.
I love it. I love it. Definitely. And definitely ChatGPT can't come up with those kind of ideas. So that's pretty unique there. And I could see them wanting to move inventory, right? They just bought it and they don't want it sitting there. So they got to move it for
Right.
Black Friday pretty soon. So they're definitely anticipating how do we get more of it out of there. Now,
Yeah.
Josh, this has been such a great conversation. So many juicy morsels that you dropped to us today.
Thank you.
I always like to ask our guests if you could leave our viewers, our listeners with one piece of advice, what would that be personal or business?
Sure. Well, I'll keep it along with the email theme. I think my biggest piece of advice would be to start an email list if you haven't. And we didn't really talk about like how to, build an email list, but if you don't have one, my best advice would be to just create on your website something where people can sign up to be on your email list. And it could be as simple as just saying, hey, sign up here for my newsletter where I give you tips on this, that, and the third, right? Or, it can be a lead magnet. And I think you might have one, Susanne. I know a lot of people in this space have like a lead magnet. You give them your email address and then you get, a video or a PDF or some kind of advice. That is a great way to build your list. But my biggest piece of advice is do that because, so many people just wait way too long, myself included. Like I didn't have an email list of my own for a while. And I do now, and I'm putting a lot into growing it. It's about 1,000 people. I'm trying to get to like 5,000 within the next year. But you don't need a big list. Like even when I only had 300 people on my email list, I still was able to get great engagement and I was able to make sales from that list. So if you do have an email list, then my advice is email them. Like don't just let it sit there. You want to be showing up, or, if you're very inconsistent, if you show up once in a while, people aren't going to engage with you. They're going to just unsubscribe because it's not that interesting. So, push yourself to actually do it. Take the time, write an email, if you're not doing any right now, start with once a week and then you can go up from there.
I love it. And now Josh is going to tell you how to join his email list, how to get people enrolled. So Josh, for our audience that's listening, really want to learn more about how to create amazing email marketing. What's the best way to contact you, to follow you, to learn more about what you do?
Yeah, well, you guessed it. I'm going to tell you, join my email list. I actually made it really easy for you. It's email123.club, email123.club. And that's where you can sign up, to join the Email Revolution newsletter. And I send email, not every day, but pretty consistently. And it's, really the whole purpose of that newsletter is to help you gain an edge in a competitive marketplace with, by using direct response email marketing. The other thing is if you do have a business that sells products online, doesn't have to be physical products, but if you sell products online, you can also go to emailprofitscheatsheet.com. That's emailprofitscheatsheet.com. And you can download our free guide there. It's a blueprint essentially on how to create an email program from scratch. So those are two ways. And I would say if you want to contact me directly, just, reply to an email or send me an email when you're on the list and I answer my emails.
I love it. I love it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Josh's contact information and his sites in the show notes so that you guys who are driving, when you get to a safe place, you can click and sign up for Josh's email list. Thank you, Josh, so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.